Shrug family, this week on Barbell Shrugged, Joel Jamieson is coming into the podcast. Some of you may have known Joel from his website, 8 Weeks Out, or HRV, or Morpheus, or just being super famous and in this industry for an enormously long time doing super high quality work. And today, a very important message on all things heart attacks and cardiovascular health for fit people. Joel has been in this industry and doing all of the right things and eating all of his vegetables and proteins and thinking about his health, and then went in to go get a checkup on his heart to find out that he was in bad shape and at very high risk, like 50% blockage, very high risk for having a heart attack, which as a fitness professional, somebody that's been doing this almost 30 years and almost never taken any longer than like a week vacation, is absolutely terrifying, because I feel like my whole world would shatter if somebody told me that I was unhealthy. Like, it would just destroy me. And that came through in this podcast with him, that it very much caught him by surprise. And now he's like on a mission to go get everybody checked. So go get your calcium scores, go take a deep dive into heart health, check in with your doctor. I know that this show made me very much rethink all of those things that I thought I was above because of the decisions I make on a daily basis, but I highly recommend it, and hopefully the show guides you to go take those steps. And as always, friends, once you've gotten that done and you would like to go optimize your health and performance, head over to rapidhealthreport.com. That is where Dr. Andy Galpin and Dan Garner are doing a free lab, lifestyle, and performance analysis, and you can access that over at rapidhealthreport.com. Friends, let's get into the show. We're going to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Anders Varner, Doug Larson, Coach Travis Mass, Joel Jamieson. I feel like I've wanted to have you on this podcast for a very long time, by the way. I can't believe 8 years later or something like that, this is the first time I've talked to you.
It doesn't make sense to me either. I feel like I've been on this podcast and yet I haven't been on the podcast yet. So I'm happy to be on the first time.
Not even in like year.
I don't think so.
No, you actually were. We had you on at Paleo FX like 10 years ago. You came on the show, out on the balcony.
I do remember that. That was a long time ago. But yeah,
the first
could be back.
time I used to in the middle when I owned my gyms, I used to tell everybody that their goal in life was to be 12 weeks out from being able to perform at their best. And then I found out you had the website 8 weeks out, and I went, what in the world am I going to do with my career now?
You got to go 7 weeks out. You got to go 7 weeks out.
That's right.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Make 8 weeks seem like that's garbage.
Like
8 weeks.
12 weeks, you should be able to lose all the weight. You should be able to get fast, get your head right, eat, sleep, really focus, and everybody can go 12 weeks really hard. And then you came and ruined my whole career.
Just made it a little bit faster. Just a little faster.
Well, I reference you all the time. Here's one of his books. Can y'all see?
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Right next to menstrual cycle. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is right next to menstrual cycle. So they're both important, man. Don't make fun of menstrual cycles. Yeah.
No,
for all you ladies, I would never do that. He did.
For everybody listening, Travis was showing the MMA conditioning book. I don't know if that's the exact title, but you're like one of the OGs in that space.
Ultimate MMA Conditioning. Yes, it's a great book.
I was started back in 2003 or 4 before anyone knew what MMA really was. So I guess I am kind of the old OG, which just makes me old. But it was fun to be a part of the rise of the sport and kind of see what it became and train those guys and travel the world with them and do all that kind of stuff. So it was awesome to be part of it.
Yeah.
Dude,
I want to dig in. You had a recent scare here.
Yeah, I don't know if scare is the right word, but I think
heart attack.
Yeah,
you just scared me, so yeah.
Good. That's good. I think we should be scared. So I'll kind of give you a quick background on this. So first of all, my dad had a heart attack in his mid-50s, triple bypass, late 50s, and died at like 61. Grandpa's on both sides, same thing, heart attacks, died early 60s. My brother at 46, which is just a year older than me, needed 3 stents put in. So I've been aware that I have the shit end of the genetics from a long time. And my mom had a stroke, cardiovascular disease, stents put in her 60s. So I've been very, very acutely aware of all of this for a long time, and I've tried to live a lifestyle that was as preventative as possible. And I started talking to my mom's cardiologist when she was getting stents put in. This is like my mid 30s, like 10 plus years ago. or so. And he's like, well, come back and see me when he looked at my blood lipids. And I've been tracking, here's an important thing to consider too. I've been tracking my blood markers for about 10, 12 years, every 6 months or so. I look at cholesterol numbers, I look at triglycerides, I look at blood pressure all the time, heart rate variability, all these things. So I've been tracking this stuff, and none of my numbers were, egregiously outside normal range. They were all pretty normal. My LDL was right around 100, HDL was in the 40s, which is a little bit low. But long story short, like nothing I was doing looked like I was on the same course. And when I talked to the cardiologist, he looked at my numbers. She's like, hey, these are great. Come back and see me when you're 40. We can talk about next steps. So unfortunately, when I was 40, it was when COVID hit. So there was no way I was getting in to do preventive care at that point. And mom got sicker and sicker. So long story short, I didn't get back until this last summer. And again, part of that was because I'm like, oh, I'm doing all the right things, right? I work out all the time. I've trained my whole life. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I sleep. All these things. Like I'm fine. Like my family must have just had shitty lifestyles, and I'm able to overcome that. Well, so I go get the CT angiogram, and sure enough, I've got major blockages. I got 50% in the Widowmaker, which is really bad, obviously, and some lesser blockages in the other ones. And so obviously I'm like, holy shit, like how, is this possible? And I've spent the last 6 months trying to understand how it's possible and what to do about it. And the more I've talked to, at this point, I've talked to the radiologist. She does 10 to 20 CT angiograms a day and has done that for 20 years. I've talked to vascular surgeons. I've talked to multiple cardiologists. I've talked to lipidologists. Like I've literally talked to everybody. And I think what it comes down to is genetics play a huge role, a bigger role than I think we in the fitness community think about. And then it gets accelerated or decelerated based on your lifestyle. So my brother needed stents at 46. I don't need stents. And I think I have caught it at least early enough to reduce my risk quite a bit. But since that point, I've started sending everybody I know, it's mostly people in the fitness industry, to the same cardiologist, or say the same radiologist to get the CT angiograms. And she's finding this widespread in the fitness community, the people I'm sending her. I haven't sent her anyone yet that hasn't had blockages, which is kind of sad. And so I think it's an important message. I think that we have this idea like, oh, I'm lifting weights, I'm doing cardio, I'm eating right, I'm healthier than the average person, which we are. And I think that plays a big role in why, overall people do have fewer heart attacks, but it still happens in the community all the time. I was at Mel Siff's house a couple of weeks before he died of a heart attack. There's Paul Equin died of heart issues. Steve Cotter, the kettlebell guy, died, a few weeks ago. Was one of Men's Health's top most fit people and had a heart attack in his 50s. So I think this happens. I think a lot of people have plaques and a lot of people have blockages they're just very unaware of. And then some people end up having heart attacks or strokes as a result of them. A lot, but some don't.
Somehow Louis Simmons made it to like 75.
Yeah.
Yeah. Took steroids his whole life. Like I know.
Yeah, well, Sarah, so my grandma smoked 70 years, like 2 packs a day. Drank like a fish, never worked a day in your life, and made it to 86. So like that's just the example of genetics. We see these people and we're like, oh, well, they lived a long, healthy life and they did all this shit wrong. Well, great. Yeah. If you have their genetics, you can do the same thing. But if you have the other end of the spectrum, it's the opposite. You can do everything right and you can still end up with these blockages. So the good thing is we can find these now. Like it's way easier to find these than it used to be because CT angiograms are much more prevalent and available. Calcium scoring is kind of a lower level of that. You can go walk in and get that done for $200. Like screw the cholesterol testing. I'm not saying you should test for cholesterol, but even in my case, my numbers were normal and I still had them basically because I have some genes that cause my arterial walls to suck up a lot more of the cholesterol than it should. And that becomes pro-inflammatory and it just starts this cascade. So you can't just go to your doctor. I think if you have the genetics, that I do, or maybe you have not that bad, but you have family members that have had heart attacks or strokes in their 50s or 60s, you should really get checked out. I don't care how much you can bench or squat or deadlift or what your VO2 max is. Like you should get checked out.
Do you think it's because our lifestyles, we do live seemingly like, higher pace, more stress and
I think
the last 2 weeks. I've been up. My sleep has been interrupted just because I've been working on a super important project, and we're also like passionate about what we do. I wonder if that's a big part of it.
So a couple of things. I think number one, that obviously contributes. I think more stress is generally worse. We know that. But I think, not to be super controversial here, but I think a shit ton of lifting weights from everything I've seen, if you are prone to cardiovascular disease, a lot of high blood pressure spikes, a lot of inflammation from chronic lifting and overtraining probably doesn't hurt or help either. I think it probably has beneficial effects in some way, obviously, for what we all know, but I think it can also have potential detrimental effects. And there's some research out there showing that people that are lifelong high intensity type of athletes tend to actually have more plaque than the average person. Now, their cardiovascular disease is still low. Well, I wouldn't say the disease actually shows up higher, but their life is still extended a bit because I think they have other mitigating factors that probably reduce the risk at the same time. So I think it's two statements can be true. Lifting weights can be really good for you, but it can also cause damage at the same time. And the net might be positive, but there's still some negative things that occur there that if you have the genetics, you probably end up on the wrong end of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to anything, and life's at some level of just about trade-offs. Given that you've already been doing, quote unquote, things right for so long, what actual changes have you implemented over the last 6 months since learning this?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I mean, like I said, if my lifestyle was shit, the first place should be to clean it up, but it's not. So you're when you're at the level I'm at where I've got, pretty significant blockages at age 45, really every lipidologist I've talked to is like, you need to get LDL and the ApoB, which is just another marker of the cholesterol side of things, as low as possible, down to about 40, which is pretty much not possible to do without drugs. So I'm on statins and PCSK9 inhibitors. And then, like I said, I've had a diet about as clean as I can get it. The lowest I've ever seen my LDL before that was 90. Now I'm down at 40. And it's a super fascinating thing, which is, I mean, look, there's a lot of, negative associations with statins, which I understand. I get a little bit of myalgia from them too. And I would definitely not be taking it if I had a choice, but I'd rather have a little muscle pain here and there than a heart attack. But what's super fascinating is my heart rate variability, which I don't know how much you guys have talked about on the show, but I've been using it for 20 plus years.
Dr. Andy Galpin here. As a listener of the show, you've probably heard us talking about the RTA program, which we're all incredibly proud of. It's the culmination of everything Dan Garner and I have learned over more than 2 decades of working with some of the world's most elite performers, award-winning athletes, billionaires, musicians, executives, and frankly, anyone who just wanted to be at their absolute best. RTA is not a normal coaching program. It's not just macros and a workout plan. It's not physique transformation and pre and post pictures. RTA is something completely different. RTA is incredibly comprehensive and designed to uncover your unique molecular signature, find your performance anchors, and solve them permanently. You'll be working with not one person, but rather a full team of elite professionals, each with their own special expertise to maximize precision, accuracy, and effectiveness of your analysis and optimization plan. RTA isn't about treating symptoms or quick fixes. It's about unlocking your full potential and looking, feeling, and performing at your absolute best, physically and mentally, when the stakes are the highest. To learn more, visit aratelab.com. That's ARETE lab.com. Now, back to the show.
But what's super fascinating is my heart rate variability, which it increased by about 12 points. It's the most potent HRV increaser I've ever seen in myself, at least. It's N equals 1. But I've never seen any drug, supplement, lifestyle change, or cover. I've never seen anything raise my HRV by 10 plus points on my own system, Morpheus. So that number varies, but on different systems. But I've never seen anything have such a dramatic impact. And just to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing, I stopped. And I'm taking a pretty low dose. I'm taking 10 milligrams of rosuvastatin, which is Crestor. It's a strong statin, but 10 milligrams is a pretty moderate dose. And you have to double the dose of statins to even have incremental effects. Around 10 milligrams seems to be a really good amount for me, and I think probably for most people. At 10 milligrams, it keeps my HRV up. And I just wanted to check this because it seems so crazy to me. I came off the statin for a couple of weeks. I literally watched my HRV decrease by the day. I went back on it, and it went right back up. It was the most direct thing I've ever seen to move HRV in a significant amount. So for me, at least, just seeing that go up and seeing my ApoB and my LDL come down to 40 was highly reassuring that this is a real thing.
Do you know what the mechanics of that are? My guess
do that? Yeah, my guess is it's anti-inflammatory, which they have said that. There's people who believe that the cholesterol lowering effects are not the big thing, that's actually an anti-inflammatory, and maybe just reducing the cholesterol burden on the arteries makes the arterial walls less inflammatory, and that lowers overall inflammation. I mean, that's kind of my guess. I think that we don't know the answer to that for sure. But I've never seen anything move the needle that much. And usually when you move the needle that much, it's inflammation dropping pretty significantly.
That's crazy.
What's something that's fascinating too is like I said, I've tested blood markers for years. I've tested high sensitivity CRP, right? So just a general marker of inflammation. And I've done it multiple times. I've done it like the day after heavy workout. I've done it after 3 days of rest. I've done it kind of in between just to see what the markers will show. After a really high intensity session, my CRP's been like 5, which is very high. And then I'd rest 2 or 3 days and it would drop down like zero point 0.4. So at least in me, again, I haven't done this with a bunch of people, a heavy workout can spike my CRP for a day or 24, 48 hours, which is quite a bit. If you think about doing that over and over again all week long, inflammation might end up being higher than you think it would be. And again, it could be a net positive in the long run, but it also could be a net negative depending on how things go. So I think that somehow the statins are just anti-inflammatory. That's the only thing I can think of that would cause that much of an increase. 'Cause obviously, it didn't increase my aerobic fitness. That's for damn sure. And it's not doing that. So inflammation really is the other big lever that it's got to be pulling.
When you found this out, I can only imagine what that would do to me. Like when I get like sick, maybe there's like at some weird level, like I'm terrified of what bad could happen, or that my entire framework of what I believe in is like completely wrong. And one day I'm going to walk in and they go like cancer. And you go, that's not possible. I'm the grass. I'm the grass-fed human. Like I only eat, I do all this stuff. And they go, nature got you though, bud. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was shocking.
Yeah. How did, I would love to know like what happens when you walk out of the doctor's office that day. Maybe this isn't just like the what you can do question, but like it is my
mentally.
favorite.
Yeah. I mean,
World,
so it's funny
all this
because
stuff, and then they go, sorry, just like the unhealthy people, you got it.
yeah, I mean, I almost went there just to reassure myself that I was right. So I went so the funny thing is I went back to the cardiologist last summer first, and he ran another blood test. He's like, oh, all your numbers look good. He did an EKG. He's like, your heart looks great. Look like you're in great shape. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, well, what about a CT angiogram? He's like, hey, that would be a good idea. He's like, but I had to ask for that. And he's like, well, you have to pay out of pocket. It's $1,500, and there's a place here you can go get it. It's up to you if you want to go do it. But it wasn't even like he said like, oh, we're really worried about you. Like you have a bunch of risk factors. Go get this done. He was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And it was, again, I had to bring it up. And so the fact that like he wasn't concerned about it, he's a cardiologist, and he didn't say like, oh, you really should go get this done. He was like, yeah, you're doing great. You look fit. Like your numbers look good. Keep going. So when I went into the CTA place to get the CT angiogram, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to go just confirm that I'm doing everything right. And I've been able to overcome this genetic, problem, and I'd be fine. And it was funny because my good friend from high school, his wife, out of thin air, his wife, or out of the blue, his wife was the tech. And I hadn't talked to her in many years, like hadn't talked to him for a number of years. Anyway, she randomly turned out to be the tech doing the CT angiogram. And so, she does the scan and I'm like, oh, I look great, right? And she's like, the doctor will be in a few minutes to talk to you. She was just doing it. I'm like,
never
what?
a good sign.
No, never a good sign. So instantly I'm like thinking like, oh, like this,
shoot,
maybe I'm not quite as good as I thought, but I'm still fine, right? And then, the radiologist comes in and she's like, this is very concerning. You've got some significant plaque here. And I'm just like, what? It's a little bit of just like disbelief. Like how is this possible? It literally is.
I'm going tomorrow. Possible. I'm literally going tomorrow. Yeah, I'm freaked out. I'm absolutely freaked out.
Yeah, you should. I mean, again, it's genetics. I mean, so again, I've been sending her people since this happened, and everyone's had blockages. And I literally have a really good friend who's been in the gym with me for 15 years. I sent him. He had really bad, even worse than me. His dad died, I think, 40, and his brother died in his 30s. Wow. Of heart attack. So that's really bad. And so he's about my age. And he literally just got the results yesterday. He's got a 70 to 80% blockage in one part, a 50% blockage in another part, and about 30% blockages in other parts. But same thing, lifelong fitness guy. He's a mixed martial artist. He's an instructor at the gym next to me for a number of years. Great guy. Lifestyle's not quite as dialed in as mine, but definitely not enough to expect those sort of numbers in his 40s. Yeah. But again, it's family. I mean, if you have a family history, you should definitely get checked. And if you don't, like, you can get away with a lot more, but there's just no guarantees, I guess I would say. And that was what I learned the hard way. So what I started doing is just calling everybody I possibly could think of. What the fuck do I do about this? How am I going to get around this or work on this? What do I need to do? And that's just why I started calling everybody and calling every resource and favor I could think of to talk to experts and get their opinions.
Well, what's the point of me doing cardio now?
I know.
Well,
What?
I mean, so the good thing is I went and did the
I
stress.
woke up this morning, 4-minute
Yeah,
intervals,
me too.
2-minute rest, going about 85%, good blood flow, felt good, starting to warm up out here, a little bit of a sweat, wasted my time.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. I went and did after I went back to cardiologist, I did a stress echo, and they basically have you do a treadmill test called a Bruce test, where you like run an incline to different speeds. Like I was able to max that thing out, and the cardiologist like we almost never see anyone other than marathon runners max this out. Blood flow to your heart is amazing because you do have better vascularization than anyone else is going to have that doesn't train. Like there's no ischemia, even though there's blockages there. So I mean, I think again, I think everything I've done is probably I don't need stents. Like I don't have to do the things my brother had to do. Like I'm still here. So I think that the things I have done from a training lifestyle standpoint are a big reason why it's not way worse. But I think the moral of the story is even, doing all the right things can't fully prevent it. And that's what the cardiologist, radiologist, everyone basically says because they see this on a daily basis. She was like 2 days ago, we had someone come in, they ran a marathon the day before, they were 38 years old, and I had to send them to get 3 stents put in because they had such blockages. So it's eye-opening. You just kind of have this idea that like, oh, I'm fit, I'm not overweight, I'm not doing all these things, I'm not, smoking and drinking, I'm not doing all these things that we traditionally think of. I don't have diabetes, and you can still have it.
Dumb of the medical community to not like pay for this. Like, why is it? I mean, I'm definitely going to pay out of pocket, fine, but like, it shouldn't be. I feel like it would save a lot of money down the line if
insurance. So you can get what's called a calcium test. A calcium test is a couple $100. Insurance might cover that. That basically tells you just if you have calcified plaque, which is the further down the road state of plaque. So when plaque first formed, it's soft plaque. Over time, it gets calcified, becomes hard plaque or calcified plaque. And so the calcium score will just kind of tell you how much of that you have. And if you have a lot of that, that's obviously the worst case. But you can also have a lot of soft plaque that doesn't get picked up in those scans. And over time, that soft plaque will become calcified plaque. And that soft plaque itself can rupture and can become thrombotic, give you a heart attack. I agree. So the CT angiograms vary depending on where you're at. I've seen them as low as $1,200 in some cities, $1,800 in other cities. Mine was $1,500. But I've been talking to the radiologist that did mine. She's awesome. She's been doing this, like I said, for 20 years. And at some point, we're going to do a little kind of, I don't know, cohort group and have people come out to where I'm at and do as many of these as we can and look at lifestyles, look at training histories, look at genetics, and follow up over 10, 15 years and see what we can find. Because she's like, I'm really concerned now because all the fitness people you're sending me have blockages. I'm like, it is concerning.
We are too.
Especially when you go and put like performance testing to it, you put lab blood work to it, trending data to it, everything's good.
The only thing I would say that I noticed is my HRV has always been lower than it should have been, given just my fitness level, and I just kind of wrote it off to like I know that genetically, genetics is a big part of HRV, so I just kind of said, well, it's not as important because I'm doing everything else right. But the fact that my HRV went up as soon as I started getting the statins means that probably if you have really low HRV, there's something there. It's at least worth exploring because that was the one thing that like marker that me always kind of stood out, and I've been studying it forever, so I knew it wasn't the best, but I kind of figured, well, I'm doing everything else right. I just have low HRV, and I'll just keep doing everything right. And that turned out to probably be a warning sign that I could have been more aware of or proactive.
What do you use to monitor your HRV?
So I have my own system called Morpheus. I developed really one of the first ones called BioForce HRV back in 2011. That turned into Morpheus, and it looks at HRV and sleep and a bunch of other stuff. But I've just, no matter what I tested on, it's always been the lower end given where my fitness is, because my resting heart rate right now is like 48 to 51, which is like, pretty fit resting heart rate. I've always been in the low 50s. But then my HRV would be kind of your average person who was a much lower fitness level relative to what it should have been. So Morpheus would be like mid 60s, upper 60s. Most people with resting heart rates in the 50s are going to be more like upper 70s to mid 80s even. So I was statistically, kind of an anomaly where my resting heart rate said, oh, this person's really fit, but my HRV didn't align with that. It was disconnected a bit. But then now that I'm on the statin, my HRV is in like the upper 70s, low 80s, which is kind of aligned with what it should have been the whole time, given the resting heart rate. So super fascinating to see that, and I wouldn't have expected it. But I've looked at enough data now, and I've gone back on and seen the very clear, relationship. It's hard to deny it.
You were actually one of the first people I ever heard talk about HRV, maybe even potentially the first. You were early to the to the game there compared to
2001 or 2002 is when I first started getting into it. So
yeah,
20,
yeah. How'd you
almost
get into
25
that?
years ago.
Yeah, dang. Yeah, how'd you get into that so early? Like, it didn't really get popular until, pop
No,
culture
so there
wise, until
was
10 years ago.
there was a guy named Randy Huntington. I don't know if most people probably don't know who he is, but he was the head had a sprint and jumps for USA Track and Field, coached Mike Powell to world record, and he was from my area, and I knew him pretty early on, and just kind of asked him for ideas, tips, strategies, just kind of like, hey, you've been doing this a long time. Is there any advice or whatever? And he said, you should check out this thing called the Omega Wave. Well, it turned out Omega Wave was really the first commercial HRV system out there. And so I met this Russian guy at the airport in a trench coat. He walked me through the whole thing and kind of told me this crazy ass story that basically the Russians had developed HRV to measure the effects of stress or effects of space on their first cosmonauts because they realized they could send this heart rate signal down to Earth and they could learn more about how the astronauts were doing than just their heart rate. And they used it for a number of years for that. And in the 1980s, they had decided to turn it into something more for the sport performance world. And they collected data from thousands of Olympic and national level athletes across Russia. And they built this huge database and they started developing the software for it. And they were almost finished with it. And the Soviet wall, the whole Soviet bloc crumbled basically and fell apart. And so this project was lost for like 10 years. And then eventually somehow 2 or 3 of the original scientists in the project ended up at a track meet in Eugene, Oregon, of all places, and started just kind of saying, hey, we should finish this project that we never got to finish in Russia. And they got together and they created this company. They created the first system that was used, first HRV system that wasn't just like medical research or, that kind of stuff. And I got to try it out and convinced them to let me make payments on it because it was super expensive at the time. And just started playing around with it super early on. So it was so fascinating to me that you could measure something, externally, and it would tell you something about the person internally and what they had done from a workout standpoint and all these different metrics and stuff I'd never even conceived of before. So yeah, it was early because it was just so fascinating to me. And then I, would mention that 20 years ago and people are like, what are you talking about? And then now it's on your Apple Watch. So it was quite the thing to watch.
Yeah, dude, the beginning of that story sounds like the beginning of an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah,
like
it literally was.
The Russians, and then the Berlin Wall falls.
Yeah.
It gets hidden for 10 years, and it's rediscovered.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I was when Randy told me he didn't even tell me like what to do. He just had called this Russian guy Val, and so I call this Russian guy Val, and he meets me at the airport, and it was
KGB's
and then so he. Yeah, so
this thing off.
So it doesn't matter if it's now. Val literally was in the KGB. So
It literally was.
It literally was. Yes.
The gangsters.
So,
Gangsters have been chasing HRV for a long time.
They have. So let's say one thing about the Russians: they're very inventive when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think they had. I don't want to endorse communism by any stretch, but because they were communists, like they did whatever they wanted to do, and they were very well organized and structured, and they were able to. Just, there was no bureaucracy. They just, let's test 10,000 athletes and keep track of it. And
Sure.
That's what they did, right? Like there was no red tape to jump through. It was just like, no, this is what we're going to do.
Oh yeah, man. Eastern Bloc Germany, right. That's when all the research was done.
Yeah,
in
because
both,
they
both
countries.
could. Yep, they could do whatever they wanted on whoever they wanted to.
Val was telling me back in the 1980s when he was also a track coach, a decathlete himself and a track coach. Back then, they were doing blood tests on a weekly basis, and they were prescribing supplementation and obviously pharmaceuticals based on blood results of each individual person that was in their Olympic program. So I was thinking about that. In the 1980s, they were getting personalized prescriptive drugs and nutrition. Everything else was built around that. And you're talking...
that's where Rapid was born, boys.
Yeah,
back then.
40 years ago, they were doing it. So
totally. And whipping our butts at the Olympics.
There's a reason for that.
Oh yeah.
Everyone wants to write off the drugs, but don't get me wrong, they played a role. But everyone was using drugs back then. It wasn't like it was just the Russians.
Oh
yeah, better at.
In the early '80s, the Americans were. Yeah, we were definitely like even in weightlifting. There's so many stories about like the Olympians from back then, what they took versus comparing them to us nowadays is like ridiculous because they had no restrictions.
Yeah, what was funny is there was the guy who was kind of the architect of the doping program in the USSR way back when he presented at one of the Central Virginia Sports Performance seminars that gets put on, and he like kind of talked about it was literally the guy that oversaw the whole thing. And the funniest part was he's like, we learned about doping from you guys in the US in like the 50s or 60s or whatever it was. Like we first learned about these medications and these drugs from the United States, and then we took them and obviously made it way more effective and systemized it and organized it and did it in a more cohesive way. But like we were the ones who kind of started the whole ball rolling in that game. They just beat us at it.
I know. I remember when I got my master's, we had a class on the whole thing about the pharmaceuticals and like how we introduced it to them. It was crazy, but just they had better systems set up for they could study it and perfect it. Whereas we were just like, we were just gangsters, just, try this.
Yeah, no, we also have to understand, like they beat us despite being at a disadvantage from just a diversity standpoint. So what's interesting is, so Val, aside from coaching, he would basically, for a period of time, he was going into schools in the USSR and he was selecting the athletes that would get elevated up into their different athlete programs. And he said he would go into like an average Russian elementary school and he would find maybe 1 to 2, maybe 3 kids who would be selected to the next level based on their athleticism. And they're just, he'd test them and all kinds of stuff. And he'd say, these 2 kids, like bring them up. And so he said when he started coming to the US, and he was a teacher actually for a while in the US, a PE teacher, he said like half the kids in the class would have qualified in the USSR because we just have so much better genetics, so much better genetic diversity in our population.
It's so much bigger.
These kids, they're so much bigger. Yeah, exactly. Our population is so much more genetically diverse. It's so much bigger. We just have a much better gene pool than the old Soviet Union did. So, and they were still beating us, right? Like they were still beating us. He was like half of the 6th grade class I would select. And in Russia, it would be 2. So it's just, we have so many advantages over here, and yet they still kicked our ass.
If we would just do that, and like, a lot, obviously, this is not the first time someone said this. If we would just do better at selection our athletes, plus you would head people in the right direction because, so many times you'll have like me, I'm 5'7", white kid trying to play college football, which I did, but could I have spent my time, somewhere else better, but oh well.
What sport would you have played?
I mean, I probably would have just done weightlifting from the very beginning, or wrestling, I
was going to say,
wrestling. You could be a wrestler.
You can only lift weights. That's it.
Wrestler.
Or wrestle.
Definitely been a wrestler.
Yeah.
Or gymnastics,
that's Olympic
I
sport.
bet you would have been no fun to try and wrap up in jiu-jitsu.
I mean,
big old barrel body of yours.
It would have been much better for me than to beat my head against the wall playing, trying to play Division I college football, which I did. But my God, like it was just having to work so much harder than everyone. Whereas, if I'd have focused on something where I was more designed for, it would have probably been a much better route.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Yeah, I think the problem with today is kids get selected into a sport, they choose a sport or whatever, and they're just way overdoing it. You get volleyball players who are every sport is year round. It's one sport and it's year round from like elementary.
Do you have kids? And do you get sucked into that?
No, didn't get sucked in. I saw enough kids coming through the gym that I decided not to do that. But no. Yeah. I mean, I just watched it.
Every time I hear a parent talk about it, I go, do you think LeBron had any issues?
No, exactly.
He just went and did. He just was the best. That's kind of how it happens. You're just the best.
Exactly.
You'll know you're the best at like 6.
Yeah.
You'll find your way.
Yeah, it was eye-opening just watching the different youth athletes come in to the training programs they put together, and you'd see these parents just they drive their girls like 3 hours to come to one strength and conditioning session for volleyball. I'm like, that's how into it parents were. Yeah.
Same with us. We're a big volleyball population. We had the number 1 boy in the whole country last year, and we had some of the best girls. It's a big facility here in North Carolina, but it's the same. They drive, from 2 states over. I'm like, wow.
I joke about it, but I was a product of all of it too.
Oh yeah, from hockey. That's right.
Hockey
at 14, and my dad actually built in the back of a minivan a bed and a desk so my sister could do her homework driving from Virginia Beach to Northern Virginia.
It just depends on what the goal. If you're trying to teach your child to for goal setting, to set your mind to something and finish this one thing, which, this past weekend, I spent a lot of time with a parent, and that's exactly what they're doing. They don't care. It's not like they're trying to get the scholarship. They're trying to teach their son to go all in and to commit and to, to do all these things. That's awesome. That's a great idea. But if you're just trying to get a scholarship for your child, think about how much money you're spending. What if you save that money? You would have the scholarship. I mean, do the math. Think about it. Like when
It's
they,
just the age at which they started at. If you're doing it at like 7, you're not doing
do the
anything.
math.
If it's
Yeah.
15 and you have to go find the biggest pond with the best swimmers, you got to go do it. It's the time. I have one of my best friends has like an 8-year-old that's playing like travel coach pitch baseball. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You could do this in your backyard, man. You are the coach.
Yeah, the funny thing I found is a lot of the athletes that got scholarships, the ones who didn't need the scholarships because their parents had so much money that they devoted their whole lives to their kids getting a scholarship, which they didn't actually need.
Yeah. And the ones who got it were going to get it no matter what. The other side of that, the ones who didn't have the money, who did get the scholarship, they were going to get it regardless. You know, LeBron was getting a scholarship.
Yeah, LeBron.
You know, yeah. Oh yeah. Never mind. He
That's how they
skipped
build
college. He
Rise
went
Indoor
straight to the
Sports, though,
NBA.
man.
Yeah.
Rise Indoor Sports is 50,000 square foot facility for one reason.
150,000. Yeah.
150,000 square feet.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Monster. And there
I
was,
love it.
I went up, when was that seminar? A year ago?
About a year ago.
There was more basketball players in that place than I had ever seen in my entire life.
We have some ballers.
It was insane. There must have been 10,000 basketball players in there at that
I
tournament
see
that
some
weekend.
crazy basketball every day. We're starting an academy at Rise, and it's just going to be just for basketball. But, because they travel so much, you just can't go to school like normal people. So we're starting an academy there. But I see some crazy stuff. The skills these kids have nowadays, it's different level. So
I mean, it's
Yo, fellas, here, hold on. Before we dig into too much of that, we only got about 8 minutes here. I want to dig back into some of the topics from earlier in the show. One of the things that you've been really instrumental in popularizing is Zone 2 cardio and all the benefits associated there.
Yeah.
Specifically related to HRV, which we've already talked about, and to heart health and potentially warding off heart attacks. Like, how does cardio and specifically Zone 2 cardio play into HRV and heart health?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's funny because Zone 2 has been around for literally ever, right? I mean, it's just long, slow distance or low intensity or whatever. I think Zone 2 is just a little bit more specific way to look at it. And overall, we know that cardiovascular training in general and having a VO2 max does give us the single best tool to help slow down or prevent, age-related diseases like cardiovascular disease and stroke and all those things. So again, I don't want my message to be like, no matter what you do, you're screwed. Because, again, I don't have to have stents put in. I have every other marker looking much better than it would be if I wasn't fit or didn't take care of myself. But we know in general, higher VO2 maxes are associated with longevity. The biggest thing is because it trains what are called the mitochondria, which we don't have to go into super long discussion. I'm sure you guys have talked about mitochondria. They're super important for a whole range of reasons. Number one, because they're producing all the energy your body lives on, and they coordinate with the nucleus of the cell, how to regulate all your metabolic functions. So if we can build our metabolic health, we can build our VO2 max, we can improve our mitochondrial function, our risk of all these things goes down. And that's the primary role of cardiovascular fitness. Strength training, this is actually an important discussion here. I love strength training. I've strength trained my whole life. Strength training is really good at playing some role in metabolic health because it makes you more insulin sensitive to all those things. It develops bone density, develops strength. You don't fall when you're older. It is not the best tool for heart health. It's just not what it's designed for. Like, yes, you are increasing your heart rate when you lift weights, but you're doing it because you're driving up blood pressure because you're contracting all those fast twitch muscle fibers in the process, and you have to have arterial resistance and stiffness for that. So you're causing the arterial walls to get a bit stiffer and thicker and resist higher blood pressures, and you're causing the heart to do some of those same things. When we're doing lower intensity, lower blood pressure cardiovascular work, we're training the heart to be more like a balloon, and we're stretching it. We're causing that left ventricle to get bigger. We're training more of the slow twitch muscle fibers to get better at burning fat. That's really what Zone 2 cardio is about. It's about the heart itself becoming more elastic, becoming more fit, becoming more capable of pumping out more blood with each beat. We're building the vascular network. We're increasing our ability to burn fat as a primary fuel source. And those are a ton of benefits that we want. But we don't see those benefits just from lifting weights, even though our heart rates might get into that same zone as part of the rest period or whatever. And it's common sense. Like, lifting weights is not the same as doing endurance training. That's not rocket science. But we tend to have a lot of people in the lifting community want to resist doing any form of cardio and say, oh, I don't need to do cardio because my heart rate is in cardio zones when I'm lifting weights. Okay, sure. But that's the recovery period. And that's not driven by demand for O2. It's driven by the sympathetic system cranking up adrenaline, noradrenaline, and blood pressure increasing, all these things. So they're just very different tools. You need strength training to build strong, healthy muscles and bones and not fall over when you get older and move around and do all that cool shit. But you can't use that as a reason to not build your cardiovascular side too, because you need that for all the reasons I just mentioned. So
you just destroyed like the ages of 22 to 32 of CrossFit for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'm not saying that's bad,
it needs to be destroyed though.
Doses, but
yeah.
They're just different tools for different things. You need both, right.
Yeah. And too many people are out there saying these things that like that if I just work out, if I lift weights at in like a circuit, that I will do that. And it's he's right.
The test is simple. Like take someone who lifts weights all the time, a power lifter, Olympic weightlifter, a bodybuilder, and have them go run a mile and watch what happens. We all know it's not going to go particularly well. So if
they're going to walk a mile, number one, they're going to walk.
Yeah, exactly. If doing those things built your cardiovascular system and built your VO2 max, we'd see them be able to go out and do things that people with high VO2 maxes can do, but they can't because it's developing things in a very different manner. Like it shouldn't be controversial to say lifting weights causes different changes in the body than doing cardio, and you need both. But somehow we like to convince ourselves that, if you lift weights, your heart rate's up, that's cardio. It's not. It's training the cardiovascular system, but it's doing very different things to it than if you're actually training the cardiovascular system to increase VO2.
Do you know how many powerlifters are used to know that are dead, early?
Yeah, a lot.
Like, think about it. It's just such a small population, number one. Because, I know like most of the people who would be considered some of the best of all time. And I mean, I could rattle off 20 easily that are dead. So like, if it was like a cardiovascular sport, like I wouldn't be able to say that, man. It's just like, it's the opposite. It's the opposite.
It is.
It makes your ventricle walls, thicker, all right, but not in the same way. Not bigger, but thicker. So less. You can get less blood in there.
Yeah, it was super interesting. I have a friend that does a lot of cadaver work, and they actually bring people from Japan to the U.S. to show them cadavers. And I was asking him, like, have you ever actually seen it? Because I want to know, like, have you seen a heart change? And the problem is they're like, well, most people we get in cadavers are just kind of average people. But he said that one time they did actually get a dude who was obviously a serious lifter. Dude was jacked. And they said, sure enough, like you'd see a very thick left ventricular wall. I said, it looked totally different than someone who doesn't lift. So again, lifting weights is a good thing. You need to do it. But when you take it to extremes or it's all you do, you can't expect that to be the sole source of your fitness because you're going to be lacking in the VO2 and the cardiovascular side, the things that is hugely important.
100% agree. Cardiovascular is by far my number one focus right now. Like I love lifting weights. It's so easy to me, but being strong is easy. So like it's fun to do something different that it's totally not. So it's easier for me to see gains. Like I'm never going to set a PR in a squat. Those days are over. I can't do it, but I can set a PR in my mind because I've never ran one. So like,
It's funny. It's funny too, because you take lifelong lifters and like, I hate cardio. And you just kind of convince them, like, just start doing a little bit, like a little bit. And they're like, actually, I kind of feel better. Like
it's so much fun. Yeah, man. Yeah. Like to be able to like, to be in, I know when I go to the NSCA conventions and, if we're a mile away, to be able to walk there and not complain, not even notice it. It's awesome, and like, I remember not too long ago, I remember being in Miami with you guys, like, gosh, when was that? When did we all go to Miami? It was like during COVID.
Recently? Oh yeah. Right out of it. Everybody got
I remember getting so pissed. We were walking around and deep down, I'm like, I hate this shit walking, Not now, man. Or when we went to Arkansas too and went bike riding, that was when I got real pissed because I couldn't keep up. And so then when I got home, I went to work. And so since then, I've been at it. And so it's so much fun, like who cares that I can squat, whatever.
Yeah. Take home messages.
I got to turn into a dad here. We gotta shut this down, man. We gotta have you back on here so we can feel like we just started getting into all the good stuff here.
Let him give his final message. He's about to give his closing remarks.
I was saying closing remarks. Yeah. Do your cardio, lift your weights, and get a CT angiogram if you're, I would say, late 30s and earlier if you have cardiovascular disease in your family or stroke. That's my take home message. And somebody out there is going to do that, and they're going to email you or DM you or whatever and say, holy shit, I found something that I would never have found, and then I'm going to feel even better. So go do it.
I'm scared to do it, but I'm going to. I dread the results.
You got to do it.
It's probably like, you're about to die.
Well, if the number of people I've sent her that have found nothing is 0. So chances are most people that get checked, you're going to find something. It's just a matter of making sure you catch it.
Where is this? Where's she at? Yeah, I mean,
she's in Seattle area, Washington. So, like I said, in the next few months, we are going to put together a group of people that can come out and get scanned. And she is the best to work with and has the latest machine. So, I'll put it out to you guys if you want to share with the audience when we do that. I'd be happy to make sure.
Oh yeah, I would like to be one of those people for sure.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Where can people find you, man?
8weeksout.com. Easiest way to find me. Just number 8weeksout.com. And I'm happy to come back on anytime and talk more about it. But it was awesome to be on today.
Absolutely. Travis.
Masterlead.com. We got a brand new website. It's coming out. It's going to be dropping probably the next week. It's going to look super sick. But I'm going to get your Morpheus too, by the way. I looked it up while we're talking.
Sweet.
I can't reach mine, but it's just on. It's like 4 hands away, 4 arm lengths away from me right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Well,
thank you for being on. This was a great show. I appreciate
Doug Larson.
it.
You bet. You can find me on Instagram, Douglas C. Larson. Joel, stoked to have you back on the show again. You were on 10 plus years
10
ago.
years.
I have a jiu-jitsu shirt on over here. I've been a big fan of MMA essentially my entire life, so you're on my radar fairly early. But got a lot of respect for you. I appreciate you coming on, and I take everything that you said today very seriously. So more cardio coming my way.
Appreciate it. And I'll have to come back on before the next 10 years. So.
For sure.
I'm Anders Varner at Anders Varner. We're Barbell Shrugged at Barbell_Shrugged. To make sure you get over to ratelab.com. That is, we're going to learn about all the lifestyle performance analysis testing. Maybe if you're really cool, you can work with Coach Travis Match over here and he can get you jacked. You can access all of that over at ratelab.com. Friends, we'll see you guys next week.